I'm talking today with Tiffany Adams and Nicole DePace, who are going to be talking with me about a program that the library is sponsoring on Thursday evening, October 22nd, starting at 7 p.m. It's going to be happening live on Zoom. We will be sharing it on Facebook and YouTube, but it is a conversation that we're happening. So for this program, I strongly encourage you to join us on Zoom so we can have the richest conversation. We may be using breakout groups. We're still figuring out the details. It's a community conversation about social justice. We're encouraging people to read a book before joining us. The book is called When They Call You a Terrorist, a Black Lives Matter Memoir by Patrice Khan-Cullors and Asha Bandale. We have some other recommendations on our website. If you look at our calendar listing for things you can read and watch and listen to in preparation, we'll explain more in this conversation. I do want to say that this program on October 22nd is co-sponsored by March Forward Quincy, Quincy for Transformative Change, and Quincy for Justice. And we'll be providing closed captioning for the program with the support of the Friends of the Thomas Crane Library. Nicole joins us from March Forward Quincy, and Tiffany, you're joining us from Quincy for Transformative Change and Quincy for Justice, if I got that right. Is there anybody else you're representing today?
I also represent the Eastern Nazarene College's Black Student Union.
Great. And I think Quincy for Justice was born from Eastern Nazarene and the Black Student Union there, or did it have its own existence before? I don't know the history, actually, of Quincy for Justice.
So Quincy for Justice is a faith-based organization that has three entities out of it. So it's Bethel Church of the Nazarene, it's Eastern Nazarene College's Black Student Union, and it's also an organization that I lead, Unified Gospel Ministries, Inc.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm so grateful to have your participation today. And Nicole, you're here with March Forward Quincy. You and I have spoken here on QATV before, and we've done some programs before. But for people who didn't catch those or don't know, the library and March Forward Quincy kind of go back to almost the beginning of March Forward Quincy. I don't know if you want to tell the story a little bit or if you'd like me to share it.
March Forward Quincy is a progressive community activist group, and we came to be out of the Women's March in 2017. The Women's March that happened, nationally and here locally in Boston. So it was folks who participated in the Women's March. It started out as
the march that happened on the same day or the day before that Trump was inaugurated.
The day after.
Okay.
And so the Women's March organization at that point in time put together 10 action items for people to take who had participated and to take into their communities, one of which was forming huddles and to get to know your community and your neighbors and to figure out who around you was like-minded, like-hearted, and to get out into your communities and start doing the work. And so the first huddle was organized and actually held at Thomas Crane Public Library, and through a series of meetings and folks who have who are still with the group and are not with the group, we became March Forward Quincy. Melissa Shapiro, actually, who's a Quincy resident, called the first Quincy huddle and was part of the steering committee. She's still part of the group, but as life changes and people's kind of their areas of focus shift, she is still a part of the group, but we've got a group of us who have kept things going with the steering committee and with the Quincy community at large. We're a progressive group, we're not a partisan group, and we really do focus on political endeavors and political, whether it's policy, whether it's looking at candidates and looking at educational needs within the community. Our mission is focused on creating a community where everyone feels welcome, where people are well informed, and where we really try to foster and nurture a sense of empathy for one another.
And that certainly dovetails with the library's mission, where we've gone through strategic planning, trying to figure out how we can be most effective and serve the most good in the community, and it boils down to what you expect from a library about satisfying curiosity and stimulating imagination and connecting people to the online world. the fourth pillar, our fourth priority, is all about fostering community. And so the fact that this huddle came together and has been local people trying to figure out how they can bring people together about issues that are of common concern really works in so many ways very naturally with the library's priorities. So I'm really grateful for the partnership. People may remember you as the moderator for a couple of programs that we sponsored together. So I like to remind folks that if they came to any of the conversations for the at-large candidates for the city council positions, the last couple election cycles, Nicole, you were the moderator for that, for those, and helped organize the entire thing to happen. So it's been a great partnership. I really appreciate all your work in the community.
Yeah, and we have definitely appreciated and benefited from working with the library, and our group has been able to accomplish quite a bit with the support of the library and utilizing the space, but also in partnering with the mission of the library in that sense of community.
Let's fast forward to 2020. Thank you for a little bit of history of March Forward Quincy. I think that's great to share, and it's just it's a fun piece of local history that people should know. I know that you and I were talking after you attended, and people from March Forward Quincy went to some of the Black Lives Matters protests this summer. And Tiffany, I think you were one of the main organizers. I believe you organized a vigil on Wollaston Beach. Was probably was that the first contact that when you two met each other? Do you remember the first time you met Nicole, Tiffany?
I actually recently just realized that I hadn't met Nicole like a couple weeks ago. So
Okay.
My actual first time meeting Nicole was through these meetings, but I physically met Nicole at our rally at City Hall just like, a month ago, if that?
Yeah, we had had some of these planning meetings, and as you're out and about in the times of COVID and you're masked up, I had a hat on and a mask and sunglasses. We all look like we're we're not necessarily easily recognizable out in public, and so I had conversations with Tiffany through Zoom, and then went to introduce myself, and it took a moment for it to click who was who. But yeah, I think I became Quincy for Transformative Change, and I don't want to overspeak, but they weren't really a formed group yet. There was the other group, Quincy Neighbors Mutual Aid, and some folks in the community had come together or had put an idea out there about having the vigil, which then turned into the vigil in March in support of Black Lives and in honor of George Floyd. And so that turned into, I think, what the organizers were hoping for. Maybe 20 to 30 people would show up in the Quincy Center to gather and create space for this. Turned into nearly 5,000 people marching through Quincy. And so that was my first introduction to a lot of the folks who have now formed Quincy for Transformative Change.
And I know that Quincy for Transformative Change kind of exploded as a social media community as well this summer, and had a lot of people around the city express interest and get engaged. And there's been task forces, and there's been a huge growth of new activists, I think, which has been really exciting to see people coming together and finding their voice and finding ways to different means of expression, because there's a lot of things that need to be changed, a lot of things that people need to talk about. So in the essence of time, I'd love to figure out, I think the next thing, the step that I want to take is, so you and I were talking Nicole, after one of those demonstrations, and you said that you've been talking to a couple other people, and the idea of bringing people together to discuss this, and more than just the long comment threads on Facebook, something that was trying to get at the matters that people are talking about when we're talking about George Floyd, when we're talking about systemic racism, when we're talking about issues that we've been living with since the beginning of this country and before then, but that have acutely impacted all of our lives. How do we have substantive conversations where we can bring people together and dive into these beyond signs and everything else? And we met with a few other people and kicked around some ideas about what we could do to really bring people together and dive in. And we came up with an idea, I think, collectively about having a community discussion series that we've branded as Brave Spaces. I think, Tiffany, you introduced the idea of calling them a brave space, which I love. Maybe if you can remember, or if you can just kind of do it off the cuff, tell us what a brave space is. We've called this about brave space creation. What does that mean?
I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard this notion of what a safe space is. And basically, it's almost similar, and it came from safe space. The biggest difference between a safe space and a brave space is a safe space allows for white people to be safe, but it's not a safe space for people of color, where a brave space allows for you to be edited when you say something that is discriminating against a particular group of people. So there's this notion of first draft language where you're able to say something. Well, in a safe space, if a non-person of color says anything, no one will go back and edit it. No one will correct you. No one will say anything. And that isn't really a safe space for people of color. But in a brave space, it's like, hey, there's first draft language, but it's with edits. So you can say something, but be ready for someone to help you edit it. So we'll tell you like, okay, that actually was a microaggression, and this is a better way for you to have said that. And it gives room for you to grow and for that person who you offended to educate you. And so that's the biggest difference between a brave space and a safe space. And that's what brave spaces are. It's an area, well, everybody in that area has to be brave enough to say things and to edit each other and to really have a really tough conversation. But at the end of that conversation, education can happen. And at the end of that conversation, you're more unified because you were able to learn together. You were able to understand how you offend people, and you were able to grow. And so I recommend using a brave space more than a safe space, because a safe space hurt people of color. A brave space allows us to be unified.
I love that. I mean, and that's, I think you expressed that really, really, just really clearly, the idea of growth and unity. And so I know that's what we were looking to come together and talk about. Let's talk a little bit about the brave space that we're going to be, the first brave space that we're going to be creating, or working to create. We're doing these conversations around specific pieces of work. And for this first piece of work, we're encouraging people to read the book ahead of time. We picked When They Call You a Terrorist, a Black Lives memoir. And we're encouraging people to read the book. They can certainly request it from the library. They can listen to it. We have it available to stream for free on Hoopla. But we also have some other recommendations if they go out and look at the calendar, because we've got some movies, we've got some conversation with Patrisse. Now, I'm curious if either of you know, I know on the book cover it says Patrisse Khan-Cullors, but I've seen recently she's just going as Patrisse Cullors. So I don't know if you know a preferred way to refer to her, but we know who we're talking about. We have some YouTube videos and some podcasts with Ms. Khan-Cullors with Patrisse. However, I don't know the best way to refer to her, so please correct me if you know a better way. We hope that people will engage with these works, but we totally understand that people are busy, that people have lots of different things that they're trying to consume and educate and calm themselves in these times. So even if they don't have any time to read those, at the beginning of this program, you, Tiffany, and some people that are helping you will be presenting some core ideas, and then we'll be asking people to engage, to step forward and be brave and talk about what these ideas mean here in Quincy. Is that a fair summary of what you're both envisioning happening?
Yes.
Yeah, great. I don't know if you want to say anything more about the book or anything else to encourage folks to engage with it. I think that might be a little incentive maybe. I could talk about it, but I'd love to hear one of you say why you really hope people will read this book.
We really want you to engage in this book because we want you to see Black people. We're human beings. Like, we're not animals. We're not people who are trying to kill anyone. We're not people who are like trying to go crazy. We're not all gang members. We're not all thugs. Some of us have had really tough lives. And this book really does a really good job of diving into that, into lives that have been destroyed because of a system that is being oppressive, that we kind of just were born into. We didn't do anything for the system to oppress. We literally were either brought here on slave ships, like my ancestors, Or some of us have come here because we're looking for this notion of an American dream. And like, I just want people to like really look at this book and really see like the treatment and like how Black people actually are being treated here, and know that like when we're out here saying Black Lives Matter, we're not saying that your life doesn't matter. We're not saying that we want all white people to die or that Christians aren't real. And we're not saying any of those things. We're just saying stop killing us. We're literally just saying that I have a life that is worth living. And so this book touches on that.
And it talks about a complicated life. I mean, I think, you know, and whenever we get to know people, we have, you know, it's the multifaceted personality. You can't define any of us by the color of our skin, by what we eat, by the people we love. There's so many different dimensions to each of us. And I also think that's something the book does, is help explore, you know, we can't reduce Black people. When we say Black Lives Matter, it's all Black lives. I know that's been central to Black Lives Matter. It's not, you know, we can't say only, you know, Black, straight businessmen lives matter. That's not it. It's everybody. We need to embrace all the different expressions of Blackness and all the different ways people can be, because it's about lives. It's not about some idea. So
I think the book is important for a few reasons, and you know, from the perspective of a white woman, I think, and as you know, an American, I think that a lot of people have an understanding that Black Lives Matter, the movement, just started this summer. And it really, you know, this has been a years-long response to injustice and oppression, and seeing the way that, and it's what's really striking to me, the way that young Black people are treated by our police and our criminal justice system, and the ripple effects that has on communities. And I think that it is a movement that was started by women, Black women, in response to the trauma that they were living through and that was happening to their families. And so I think it's really important to understand the history of this, and that it didn't just start after George Floyd was murdered this summer. And I think it's really important to see that it's a response to what's happening to people, to families, to communities, and to our country. And that it's a response that comes with answers. So they're not just, it is not just about the Black Lives Matter movement resisting things or protesting things. They're also demanding things, and they're also reimagining things, and they're also recommending things, and they are successful in being able to change their lives and our lives and communities. And I think it's good to have an understanding of why we should be listening. And that was one of the things that I got out of this book. And it's just it's a memoir, so it's a very human story. And it gives a lot of heart to this movement. So I think that there's a lot to gain from reading the book and then being able to discuss it.
Nicole, Tiffany, thank you so much. I hope that people will take these words to heart, and they will engage with some of these works that we've been talking about, that they'll go out to the website and find some links so they can learn more, that they'll place a copy and hopefully read this book or engage with it in other ways. And mostly I hope that people will tune in and join us for this crucial conversation. We talked about this being the first of several, and hopefully we can stay true to that vision. I'm certainly excited about this possibility and about bringing people together, and really appreciative and grateful for both of your efforts and the other people who've been doing it with us. So thank you so much for talking with me today, and may we continue moving forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Clayton. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you both.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed my conversation just now with Tiffany Adams and Nicole DePace. We were just talking, if you tuned in after the beginning, about a program happening sponsored by the library on Thursday, October 22nd at 7 p.m. The name of that program, which you can find on our online calendar from our website, is Brave Spaces Community Conversations about Social Justice. I hope you will join us on the 22nd so we can continue this conversation with a larger audience.